Graham, you're here today to have you and I have a conversation, a curious conversation around how the ergodic theory and process and the things that you've built could solve for and or mitigate, ideally solve, this issue around UN Sustainable Goal number 8, which decent work in economic growth. And my role here will be to ask you some questions as if I'm an investor and use these questions in a contextual manner, because the same questions seem to come up in almost every investor meeting. It's the fundamental things that they want. However, each UN Sustainable Development Goal will have a different contextual relevance to, or may or may not work, right? Or work differently, right? In each one's, right? So if I'm looking at it as an investor and you come to me and say, hey, investors, guys, I've solved this problem of UN Sustainable Development Goal 8, and I've got this process and methodology that will help create decent work and economic growth for humans on the planet Earth. Right? That's a big one, right? And so, of course, as an investor, I'm going to say, sure, yeah, I heard that one before, right? So we're going to look at this response, Graham, as this investor community, as first and foremost, right? The clarity of the problem is there, right? We got that. Who cares is pretty clear. We've kind of walked through that in the prior episode. The people that are not in a sustainable economic role or position are definitely care. And the community, and if we go out from the human to the local community, to the society, to the world at large, right? It kind of grows up like an infinite spiral that just goes up, or a flower, or whatever analogy you want to use. It's fundamentally the foundation, right, of how this human population moves and grows. And so why are you doing this, right? This is kind of the third question we would ask. And I think we addressed why this is important for you. And as you learn from your past experience, and now applying that from the physics background to big brand, Procter & Gamble, I guess it was, right?
Yeah, Procter & Gamble.
And looking at how some of these organizations are inherently using this process, but it's not necessarily widely adopted across the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so it makes sense, since, if you believe the numbers, most jobs are generated by the small, mid-sized companies, right? The small to mid-sized companies, the entrepreneurs, not necessarily the Procter & Gambles, although they may have lots and lots of people. The majority of work is found in these local, small, regional, contextual businesses. And if we can integrate this process in that ecosystem from the ground up, we can create a very large exponential impact. So I'm sort of paraphrasing to make sure as an investor, I'm tracking where we are. So far, so good?
Yes, so far, so good.
And so if we move to question number 4, which is, okay, what's the current situation on the planet, or in this world of entrepreneurs and ecosystems and the adoption of the ergodic process? I would probably venture to say that it's in its infancy, right? It's not necessarily widely adopted. It's not taught in the schools. It's not taught in the business schools. It's not taught in the incubators necessarily, or the startup labs, or the Y Combinators, or the 500 startups, and all the ones that have done phenomenal things. And it's not integrated into the venture and private equity funds or the family office worlds who are looking to invest in companies that may have some impact on the planet, the social impact investors and all that world. And from what I'm understanding, what you've got here could really touch all those points and create a process and methodology that is, trackable and measurable, and something that could create even greater, bigger, more exponential returns once you really get rid of a lot of the waste. So far, so good?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so the fifth vision is, let's figure out how to get this ergodic process in Evolute 6 inside the workforce development and economic development offices of every country, every state, every local municipality, every city mayor, right? They all have a political ambition, which, if you've listened to the rhetoric of the political world, and outside of all the other existential threats, the fundamental thing that everyone, for the most part, who's voting cares about is, am I going to have a job? Or am I going to have to pay more taxes on the job that I either have or don't have, or hate or love, right? And it really comes down to, can I feed my family, right? And all the other stuff really is just noise until that's solved. It's kind of fundamental Maslow hierarchy. And then all the other things seem to waterfall or domino after this fundamental, can we put people to work? Okay. So lofty goal, Graham, really appreciate you showing up for this. And so from the investor perspective, it's like, great, right? So I've kind of understood that, right? And then we come down to sort of the big vision, got that, right? We need to get most, if not everybody, in that role. Why would we leave anybody out, right? And then the sixth question is when, right? Do you need the people, places, and ideas or resources to make this a sustainable business? Because you're for profit. You're not looking to handouts. You're not an NGO, God bless them all, right? You're looking to not only make this a sustainable business, so the team or Evolute 6 is sustainable, but then you can grow that team and then ideally scale that, because if there are 8 billion people on the planet and growing, and there are certain people at a job looking for job age, and we could say that that could be somewhere from an 18-year-old to a 100-year-old, because the whole issue about people 75 and older, now we're still living another 20 years, and what are they going to do? This is a big problem. So far, so good. So we're going to want to know, right, what your plan is for getting this thing to a sustainable break even, right, and what the timeline is, and how much money you're going to need, and when you're going to pay us back. At the end of the day, right, that's what an investor cares about. And while they love the projections, and we love the projections and the spreadsheets and all the cool things that we can do on paper, at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, and the middle of the day, and the end of the day, you and your team are going to actually have to do something, build something, create something that's going to have a cost basis, and that's going to have a time to market basis, and that's going to have a profitability basis, which will allow you to either, one, pay us back, and or build equity if we're in it for the long game, which this, if I were to look at the world of capital, this is not a 24, 36-month flip and sell and do again model. This is an inherent model that should be baked into the business world and the entrepreneurial world from today going forward, and continue to learn and evolve with the world and the planet. So this model continues to learn. And so we now looking at you not as a quick flip, right? So you're looking for patient investors, patient capital.
Yes.
Right. And there are people out there that have expressly said, and we've mentioned some of them, Acumen Fund, Jacqueline Ogratz, and others, right, that are out there and saying, listen, we know some problems aren't going to be flipped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now that I've made sure that I sort of caught up with you, right, so we can then go back to you and say, oh, okay, Graham, so